"Dad, you're not welcome at our house for Christmas this year." Those were the exact words my son Andrew said to me, his voice steady, like he had rehearsed them. In that moment, it felt as if someone had taken a hammer and driven it straight into my chest. I had given him everything, my time, my savings, even the money meant to secure my own retirement, and yet he looked at me as though I were nothing more than an inconvenience. I wanted to shout, to remind him whose shoulders he had stood on all his life, but instead I smiled, a smile that hurt my face as much as my heart. I turned, walked out into the cold December air, and sat behind the wheel of my old pickup truck. My hands shook, not from the winter chill, but from the kind of betrayal no father should ever have to feel. Then, with a deep breath, I pulled out my phone and made one call. By New Year's, the mortgage payments I'd been covering for him and his wife were cancelled. And that was only the beginning. My name is Richard Collins, 62 years old. My hair has turned more silver than black. My frame still tall but thinner than I used to be, after years of giving everything I had away. My face carries lines etched by both hard work and heartbreak, but I like to think my eyes still hold kindness. I used to run a small construction business, building homes for other families while my own house remained modest and worn. 8 years ago, I lost my wife, Helen. She was the heart, the warmth, the soul of everything we were. Since the day she passed, silence has settled into my home like a heavy blanket, and no matter what I do, it never lifts. My son, Andrew, is 35 now. He's sharp, polished, the kind of man who looks comfortable in tailored suits and expensive watches. He always had ambition, a hunger to climb higher, to belong to a world shinier than the one I raised him in. Somewhere along the way, that hunger pulled him far from me. When he married Sophia, a woman born into wealth, elegance, and a quiet kind of arrogance, that distance grew wider. Sophia had a smile as smooth as glass, but behind it lived a look that could cut straight through me, like she saw me as nothing more than a relic from a life she never wanted. She never said it out loud, but her eyes told the story. I was beneath her. I live in Spokane, Washington. Winters here are something out of a postcard. Snow blanketing the rooftops, children pulling sleds across white hills, Christmas lights twinkling in every neighborhood. People call it a cold season wrapped in warmth. Families gather, laughter spills from dining rooms, and love carries through the crisp air. But that particular winter, none of it reached me. The cold outside was nothing compared to the frost growing inside my chest. For the past 5 years, I had been paying nearly $3,000 a month to cover Andrew and Sophia's mortgage. That's $3,000 every single month, money that should have gone to my retirement, to the quiet security Helen and I once dreamed of. I drained Helen's life insurance. I pulled from my savings. I carved away at the little comfort I had left just to keep their home afloat. I told myself it was worth it. That's what fathers do. They build, they sacrifice, they endure. And so I endured, month after month, convincing myself I was doing the right thing. But every time I stepped inside their house, it was like walking through a museum of my own sacrifices. Hardwood floors polished until they shone, silk curtains cascading down tall windows, stainless steel appliances gleaming in the kitchen. Sophia would laugh about her new mixer, her jewelry, her vacations, all things that, unknowingly, I had paid for. And though the sting hit me deep, I swallowed it. I told myself I wasn't being used, I was helping my son. That was the lie I kept feeding myself. Then came the night Andrew told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas. His words sliced deeper than any knife. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the man I had once carried on my shoulders through rainstorms, the boy I had once worked nights for just to buy his first bicycle, the child Helen had cradled with every ounce of love she had. All of that, and still he looked at me with the coldness of a stranger. That evening, I went home and sat in my small living room, staring at an old photo of Helen and me on our wedding day. Her smile still burned with life in that picture, her eyes soft, as if she were whispering to me across the years, "Richard, when will you stop letting them use you?" I sat there for hours, holding that frame in my lap, asking myself the same question. If she were here, she would never want me to be treated this way. And yet, I could almost hear her heart breaking too, at the thought of what our son had become. Through the window, I watched the neighborhood glow with Christmas lights. I heard families laughing, children calling out in joy, music spilling from nearby houses. And there I sat, alone, like a man abandoned in his own life. But in that stillness, in that aching loneliness, a new kind of clarity settled over me. I realized I had lived too long under the shadow of sacrifice. I had mistaken silence for love, money for connection, and in doing so, I had taught Andrew that my only worth was in my wallet. I had handed him every reason to disregard me, and only I could change that. I rose from my chair, walked to the drawer in my desk, and pulled out the evidence of all my years of giving. Bank statements, transfer receipts, confirmation emails. 5 years' worth. 60 months. More than $200,000. Each line item was like a tally mark on my soul. I stared at them one by one, realizing that they weren't just proof of sacrifice, they were proof of blindness. That night, I made myself a promise. This Christmas would not be like the others. I would not sit in the shadows while they celebrated in the glow of my labor. I would not let them pretend I was invisible. No, this year, I would stand. I would show them who I was. Not a wallet, not a servant, not a forgotten man, but their father. And if Andrew needed a wake-up call, I was going to give it to him in a way he would never forget. It is 1 week before Christmas, when the air in Andrew's living room turns heavy. I stand in front of the tree, its golden lights twinkling against glass ornaments that cost more than my entire monthly grocery bill. The house smells of cinnamon candles and fresh pine, the kind of scent Helen used to love. For a moment, I let myself pretend it is a place of welcome. But then Andrew clears his throat and the illusion shatters. "Dad," he says, his hands folded neatly as though he is presenting a business deal. "It's easier this way. Sophia's parents want Christmas their way and, well, you don't really fit in." His voice is calm, practiced. He doesn't stumble, doesn't hesitate. My own son has rehearsed the words to cast me out. I blink at him, unsure I've heard right. But then my eyes sweep across the living room, the silk curtains Sophia insisted on, the velvet sofa cushions, the polished hardwood floors that gleam under the lights. Every corner screams money, comfort, luxury. Every corner also whispers my sacrifice. 5 years of $3,000 checks, 60 months of draining my retirement, $200,000 gone like dust in the wind. I gave them this life. And now Andrew stands here, telling me I don't fit in it. Before I can form a reply, Sophia enters. She moves like she owns the very air. Her dress is sleek, her smile composed, her voice coated in sugar that hides a blade beneath. "I hope you understand, Richard. It's just better if you're not here." She says it gently, almost kindly, as if she is doing me a favor by erasing me from the holiday. My throat tightens. My first instinct is to shout, to tear down their lies and remind them who paid for every brick of this house. To tell Sophia she is living inside my sacrifice, parading her wealth like a queen on a throne I built. But I don't. I bite down on my rage so hard my jaw aches. I force a small smile, the kind that doesn't reach my eyes. I turn toward the door. The December wind is waiting outside, sharp and merciless. It slams against my face the moment I step out, colder than I remember, colder than I can bear. My old pickup truck groans as I slide into the seat. My hands shake not from the weather, but from the betrayal that cuts deeper than frostbite. And as my breath fogs up the windshield, I whisper to myself, soon they will learn what justice feels like. The next day, my phone rings. Sophia's voice pours through, sweet as honey. "Richard," she says, "would you be a dear and pick up my parents from the airport tomorrow? Their flight gets in at 2. My grip tightens around the phone. Yesterday I was unworthy of a chair at their table. Today I am good enough to play chauffeur. My silence stretches. Then I answer with one word I haven't used with her in years. No. The pause on the other end is icy. "I see," she says, her sweetness vanishing. The line goes dead. I know at that moment I've drawn a line in the snow they will not forgive. 2 days later, I feel the shift in the air around town. A neighbor at the grocery store avoids my eyes. A friend at church offers a stiff nod instead of conversation. Then I hear an article in the Spokane Review. Curiosity claws at me until I finally hold the paper in my hands. The headline reads, "Estranged father abandons family during holidays." The words twist my stomach into knots. I read every line, my pulse hammering. They call me bitter, unstable, cruel. They say I refuse to support my son during the holiday season, that I have burdened Andrew and Sophia with guilt for years. They make me out to be a parasite, clinging to their success. Not a single word about the money, the mortgage, the endless checks I wrote to keep their perfect world alive. Not a single mention of Helen's insurance, drained to cover the house where I am now, forbidden to set foot. I slam the paper down on my kitchen table. My hands tremble. My chest feels like it's caving in. Neighbors who once waved now cross the street. Old friends stop returning calls. It is as if the article rips away my reputation in a single sweep, painting me into the shadows. And worst of all, the lies come not from strangers, but from my own blood. That night, I sit in my living room staring at the photo of Helen on our wedding day. Her smile beams with hope, her eyes soft as summer rain. I imagine her voice, gentle but firm. "Richard, you cannot let them do this to you." I press the frame to my chest. If she were here, she would ache to see Andrew turn this way. She would mourn the boy we raised, now swallowed by pride and manipulation. For a moment, I want to give in, to stay silent, as I always have, swallowing my pain like medicine that never heals, to disappear quietly, let the world believe their lies. But then something in me cracks, a realization, sharp and undeniable. Silence is what got me here. My silence has taught them I am nothing more than a wallet. My silence has made me invisible. I rise and walk to the desk. I pull open the drawer and spread the papers across its surface. Bank statements, receipts, proof of transfers, 5 years of evidence stacked in neat, accusing lines. 60 months, over $200,000. Each page burns like fire in my hands. They wanted to bury me in lies, but I have the truth, and it is heavier than anything they can carry. I stare into the dark window. My reflection stares back, older, worn, but still standing. Snow falls outside, soft and silent, covering the world in white. "No more," I whisper. "I will not be erased. I will not be their scapegoat. They want to play with my name. Then they will choke on the truth I have carried for too long." And in that moment, I know the conflict has begun. This is not about Christmas anymore. This is about survival, about dignity, about reclaiming the respect they stripped from me piece by piece. The storm has started, but for the first time in years, I am not running from it. I am walking straight into its center, and I will not stop until they know exactly who I am. The day after the article runs, I walk down the street in Spokane and feel the shift in every glance. Neighbors who once greeted me with warm nods now pull their children closer. Old friends from my construction days offer half smiles, then look away. It is as though ink from the paper has stained me, darkening every corner of my reputation. I keep my head high, but inside I am boiling. I know the truth, every payment, every sacrifice. I know the countless nights I lay awake, staring at my bank account, calculating how much longer I could keep this going. I know what it cost me to keep their dream alive. And now, to be painted as cruel, as a man who abandoned his family, that is more than betrayal. That is an execution of character. Sophia calls again 2 days later, her voice sugary but trembling beneath the surface. "Richard," she says, "you've hurt Andrew more than you realize. People are talking. If you could just apologize publicly, maybe all this could be smoothed over." Apologize. The word rattles around in my head like a loose nail. They take my money for years, ban me from Christmas, smear me in the press, and now I am to apologize. My jaw tightens until it aches. "No," I say firmly. "I will not." Her gasp is sharp before the line goes dead. The next morning I find a letter slipped under my door. No return address, but the handwriting is Sophia's. If you keep stirring trouble, we will make sure everyone knows just how unstable you really are. My hands tremble as I read. It is not enough for them to lie. They want to bury me completely. The anger inside me grows into something else resolve. I gather the receipts again, line them across my dining table. I print copies of every transfer, every email confirmation, every mortgage statement. I slip them into folders, one by one. 12 folders in total, one for each of the 12 guests I know will be at Andrew and Sophia's Christmas dinner. If they want to play games with reputation, then I will play with truth. At night, I rehearse the words I will say. I imagine the shock on Sophia's face, the shame tightening Andrew's jaw. I picture the silence that will fill that perfect dining room once the truth is laid bare. Fear presses at me, of course. It whispers that I am about to burn every bridge left. But another voice, Helen's voice, steadier, stronger, reminds me dignity is worth more than silence. As Christmas Eve approaches, I iron the navy tie I wore to Helen's funeral. It feels like armor now, a symbol of strength I didn't know I still had. I slide the folders into my briefcase, each one a weapon forged from years of sacrifice. I stand before the mirror, stare into my own tired eyes and whisper, "Tonight, I will not be the forgotten one." The drive to Andrew's house is quiet, snow crunching under my tires, the world lit by the soft glow of Christmas lights. Every house I pass is full of warmth and laughter, every house but mine. Yet tonight, I am not seeking warmth. I am seeking justice. When I arrive, I park a block away, the briefcase heavy in my hand as I walk. The house glows with golden light, music spilling from within. I can hear laughter, clinking glasses, the hum of comfort bought with my labor. My heart pounds, but my steps are steady. I open the door without knocking, stepping into the warmth. 12 faces turn toward me, forks pausing mid-air, conversations freezing mid-sentence. Andrew's face drains of color. Sophia's smile falters, her glass trembling in her hand. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Andrew stammers, half rising from his seat. I close the door gently behind me, the click echoing through the room like a gunshot. "I'm here," I say evenly, "to share the truth." I set the briefcase on the dining table, right in the middle of their feast. Plates of roasted turkey, bowls of potatoes, crystal glasses filled with wine, all of it looks like a banquet in a castle. And I am here to bring down the walls. I snap open the locks of the briefcase. The metallic click cuts through the room, sharper than the knives resting on their plates. Every eye follows my hands as I pull out the folders, thick with 5 years of evidence. My heartbeat steadies, as though it has been waiting for this moment. One by one, I slide the folders across the table. 12 pairs of hands receive them reluctantly. Guests who had come for wine and laughter, now staring at bank statements and mortgage transfers. Confusion ripples through the room. Forks lower. Wine glasses hover mid-air. "This," I begin, my voice calm even, "is the truth you have not been told. For 5 years I have paid $3,000 a month to cover Andrew and Sophia's mortgage. That is more than $200,000. Money from my retirement. Money from Helen's life insurance. Money I worked my entire life to save." A murmur rises, sharp and disbelieving. One of Sophia's friends gasps, flipping through the pages. Another guest looks up at Andrew, his brow furrowed. I let the silence build before I continue. "And yet," I say, locking eyes with my son, "1 week ago, Andrew told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas." Sophia agreed. "They said I didn't fit in." The words taste like ash, but I let them hang heavy in the air. Sophia's cheeks flush crimson. She laughs, brittle and forced. "This is ridiculous. He's exaggerating. Those aren't—" "They are," I cut in, my tone sharper now. "Bank statements, direct transfers, every dollar I sent, every month, for 5 years." I slide one final sheet across the table, the Spokane Review article. And when I finally said no, they didn't just cut me out, they lied. They painted me as a cruel, unstable man. They tried to bury me under shame. Gasps circle the table. Forks clatter onto china. Guests who came dressed in holiday cheer now shift uncomfortably, their faces pale under the candlelight. Andrew bows his head, unable to meet my eyes. His shoulders slump, the polished suit he wears suddenly too heavy for him. For the first time, I see not a man but a boy lost behind his wife's shadow. Sophia straightens in her chair, her voice rising. "You don't understand. He wanted to help. We never asked him to." "No." I interrupt again, my voice steady as steel. "You didn't ask. You demanded. And I gave because I loved my son. I gave until I had nothing left. And still, you turned me into the villain." The room is silent now, except for the faint crackle of the fireplace. Even Sophia's parents, Cody and Catherine, shift in their seats, their perfect posture faltering under the weight of truth. They look at the papers in their hands, then at me, then away, as if unable to bear what they see. I stand taller, my voice filling the room. "This is the last dinner I will ever pay for. From now on, you are on your own. Every lie you've told, every mask you've worn, it ends tonight." The silence stretches until it feels like the walls themselves are listening. Then the shouting begins, not from me, but from them. Sophia hurls accusations at Andrew, her voice shrill and desperate. Guests whisper to one another, some sliding the folders back across the table as though the evidence burns their hands. Andrew tries to calm her, but his words falter. The perfect picture of their life crumbles in front of everyone, shards of glass falling where laughter once lived. I walk to the door, my briefcase now empty, but my spirit lighter than it has been in years. The noise behind me swells anger, panic, shame. It is not music, but to me it is sweeter than any Christmas carol. As I step into the night, snowflakes drift down, soft and silent, covering the earth like a clean slate. The cold air fills my lungs, and for the first time in years, it does not hurt. I whisper to myself, "Helen, I did it." I finally stood up. The house glows behind me, but I no longer feel its pull. I walk toward my truck, each step firm, each breath steady. The storm is theirs now, my storm is over. Christmas morning dawns, and for the first time in years, I wake up without dread weighing down my chest. The silence in my little house feels different today. It isn't the hollow silence of loneliness, but something cleaner, something lighter. Freedom. I sit on the edge of my bed for a long moment, letting the weak winter sun pour through the frosted glass, warming the floorboards at my feet. I brew a pot of coffee, the rich smell filling my kitchen, and I pour it into my old chipped mug. I carry it to the table and sit, staring out the window at the snow piled high against the fence. In years past, Christmas morning meant a knot in my stomach, a phone call waiting, some task Sophia demanded of me, or a quiet ache at not being truly welcomed. But today, I know exactly what they are thinking about. Not gifts, not feasts, but the evidence I laid before them like a sword across their perfect table. I picture it now, their guests whispering, the shame burning Andrew's face, Sophia's smile cracking like thin ice. Part of me aches for Andrew. He is my son, flesh of my flesh. But another part whispers that pain is the only teacher left for him. Sometimes a man must be broken to see who he really island. I sip the coffee slowly, its warmth grounding me. On the table beside me lies the folder I kept for myself, thick with receipts, statements, proof that I am not the monster they painted me to be. Proof that I am not unstable, not cruel, but a father who gave and gave until he nearly had nothing left. I flip through the pages, feeling my pulse steady. For the first time in months, maybe years, my hands do not tremble. These papers are no longer just records of sacrifice, they are my redemption. The days after Christmas pass differently than I expect. The article's shadow lingers at first. Neighbors still glance at me with suspicion. Whispers still curl behind my back. But slowly, like snow melting under spring sun, the tide begins to turn. A knock at my door one evening reveals Mrs. Peterson from across the street, holding out a plate of cookies. Her eyes are wet as she murmurs, "I'm sorry, Richard. I should have known better than to believe the paper." A few days later, an old friend from my construction crew calls. His voice is rough with age, but steady. "Heard the truth, Rich. You did right. Each gesture is small, but together they begin to stitch something inside me. My name is not lost. My dignity is not erased." Meanwhile, the silence from Andrew stretches on. No calls, no visits, no apology. The first week, it stings like a fresh wound. I catch myself glancing at the phone each night, half hoping his name will glow on the screen. But as days bleed into weeks, I feel the sting dull. Distance, I realize, is not always punishment. Sometimes it is medicine. Perhaps he needs this silence to finally face himself. With the weight lifted from my shoulders, I begin to fill my days with things I had long forgotten. I drive out to the old fishing spot Helen and I loved, the river half frozen but still beautiful in its persistence. I wander the aisles of the library, losing myself in books I never had the luxury to read while working. At church, I sit in the back pew, letting the hymns wash over me like a balm. People begin nodding at me again, some even shaking my hand, and I realize how much of life I let slip by while chained to sacrifice. Rosa, my sister, insists I join her family often. Her house is noisy, cluttered, alive. Kids run circles around the table. The kitchen smells of garlic and roasted meat, laughter bubbles at every turn. I sit among them, sometimes just listening, sometimes laughing until tears prick my eyes. At her table, I am not a wallet, not a burden, not an outcast. I am simply Richard, their uncle, their brother, their family. One night, after the dishes are cleared and the kids tucked in, Rosa and I sit on her porch. She pours me a glass of whiskey, and we watch the stars scatter across the dark sky. She looks at me with that steady, older sister gaze that sees right through a man. "You've carried them for too long, Richard," she says. "It's about time you carried yourself." Her words land deep. For years, I thought sacrifice was love, that giving was proof of worth. But sitting here, with the weight off my shoulders, I see how wrong I was. Real love doesn't demand receipts. Real family doesn't put conditions on belonging. Spring edges closer, the snow softening into muddy paths and budding branches. One afternoon, I sit on my porch, the sun warming my face, when I hear the crunch of footsteps on gravel. I look up, and there he is, Andrew. For a second, I hardly recognize him. The sharp lines of pride are gone. His suit hangs loose, rumpled. His face is pale, his eyes hollow. He looks like a man who has been emptied out. "Dad," he says, his voice low, rough. He swallows hard, his throat working. "The house, it's gone. Foreclosure." I nod slowly, the words hitting me like a stone I already knew was falling. He shifts on his feet, his shoulders sagging under invisible weight. I don't know what to do. I made a mess of everything. I was wrong. About you. About everything. His voice breaks, the sound of a boy lost inside a man's body. I let him speak. I let him pour out his regret, his shame, his realization that he traded love for appearances, family for pride. When his words finally dry up, leaving only silence and tears, I place my hand gently on his shoulder. "Forgiveness, yes," I say quietly. "But the money, the years, I'll never get those back." He nods, choking back sobs, his face buried in his hands. For the first time in a long while, I see not the polished, arrogant man who cast me out, but my son. The boy who once clutched my hand crossing the street, the boy who wept when Helen died, the boy who lost his way. "You need to rebuild, Andrew," I continue, steady now. "Not just a house, yourself. And this time you do it with your own two hands." He nods again, his tears dripping onto the porch. When he finally rises to leave, he looks at me with eyes stripped of pride, heavy with truth. I don't know what our future holds, but for the first time, I don't ache for what we may never get back. I am grounded in what I have regained, my dignity, my freedom, my voice. That evening, I sit back on the porch with another glass of whiskey, the sunset painting the sky in gold and pink. Birds sing from budding trees, the world alive after winter's grip. And I realize something profound. I am alive again too. For years I was buried under obligation, invisible even to myself. Now, I breathe freely. I laugh freely. I live freely. I raise my glass to the horizon, to Helen, to the woman who always believed in me. I did it, I whisper. I found my way back. The whiskey warms me from the inside out. The cool air brushes my skin, and for the first time in far too long, I taste something sweeter than any Christmas feast. Freedom. Spring turns into early summer, and though the air grows warm and the days stretch long, I still feel the chill of the past lingering in my bones. My life is quieter now, but not empty. I rise early, tend to the small garden behind my house, and take long walks through the neighborhood. Some people greet me again, some still avert their eyes, but I no longer shrink under their judgment. I know who I am, and for once, that is enough. Yet peace never comes without its tests. One morning, as I drink coffee on my porch, I hear the low rumble of a car pulling into my driveway. A sleek black sedan stops, and out step Cody and Catherine Sophia's parents. Their clothes are as polished as ever, Catherine's pearls glinting in the sun, Cody's expression tight with restrained anger. "Richard." Catherine begins, her tone brittle but polite. "We need to talk." As new. I gesture toward the porch chairs, though I don't miss the irony. These are the very people whose wishes pushed me out of Andrew's house in the first place. They sit stiffly, as though the worn wood of my porch might stain them. Cody leans forward, his voice low. "You humiliated our daughter. Do you have any idea the damage you caused? The whispers in our circle? The shame?" I sip my coffee, letting the bitterness roll over my tongue. "The only damage I caused was the truth, and if the truth brings shame, perhaps you should ask why." Catherine's eyes flash. "You could have handled this quietly, a family matter. Instead, you made a spectacle." I set the mug down, my hand steady. "No. Sophia and Andrew made a spectacle when they smeared me in the press. I merely corrected the record." They exchange a glance, their silence heavy with frustration. Then Catherine leans in, her voice a sharp whisper. "You may think you've won, Richard, but families like ours don't forget. You'll find doors closing in this town." I meet her gaze, unflinching. "Then let them close. I've spent too long knocking on doors that were never meant for me." They rise abruptly, their chairs scraping against the porch. Without another word they leave, the black sedan disappearing down the road. I watch them go, a strange calm settling over me. For years, their approval mattered because Andrew made it matter. But now I see them for what they are, fragile people clinging to image, terrified of cracks in their porcelain world. Weeks pass, and I focus on rebuilding in small ways. I volunteer at the local shelter, fixing leaky pipes and patching walls. The work feels familiar, grounding. I see gratitude in the eyes of strangers, and it fills me with something I haven't felt in years, purpose. Then late one afternoon, Andrew returns. This time, he isn't alone. He stands at the edge of my porch with Sophia by his side. She looks thinner, her elegance dulled, her eyes sharp but tired. Andrew's hands are clasped tightly in front of him, his knuckles white. "Dad," he begins, his voice cautious, we need your help." The words hang in the air, heavy as storm clouds. I don't answer right away. I let the silence press against them, the way their silence once pressed against me. Finally I say, "Help with what?" "The foreclosure is done. We're renting now. Things are different, harder. Sophia's parents cut us off. We don't have the support we used to. I thought maybe you could—" His voice falters. Sophia interrupts, her tone sharper. "We know you have savings, Richard. You could spare something, just until we get back on our feet." I feel the old instinct stir in me, the reflex to reach for my wallet, to ease their burden, to protect Andrew. But then I hear Helen's voice, steady as ever. "Don't let them use you, Richard." "Not again." I shake my head slowly. "No, I've given enough. More than enough. It's time you both stand on your own. Sophia's face hardens, her lips pressing into a thin line. Andrew looks at me, desperation swimming in his eyes. Please, Dad. I don't know what to do. I take a deep breath, my words measured. You rebuild. You work. You learn the value of what you once took for granted. That's what you do. Oh, for a moment, silence stretches between us, thick with all the years of unspoken truths. Then Sophia turns on her heel, walking quickly toward the car. Andrew lingers, his eyes locked on mine. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he whispers. No, I reply softly, but you have it. What you don't have anymore is my sacrifice. He nods, tears glinting in his eyes, before following his wife. I watch them leave, my chest heavy but steady. For the first time, I have drawn a line and held it. The days after Andrew's visit feel heavier than I expect. His eyes, full of desperation, linger in my mind. I walk through the house, fix myself meals, water the garden, but I can't shake the image of him standing there like a boy again, asking for help. I forgive him, yes, but forgiveness doesn't erase the scars. It doesn't refill the years or the savings I poured into their dream. One Sunday, at church, the pastor speaks about boundaries. He says love without boundaries is not love but enablement. The words strike me hard, like they're aimed directly at my chest. I realize that for too long, I confused sacrifice with love. I gave without limit, thinking it would hold us together. Instead, it drove us apart, because what Andrew learned wasn't gratitude, it was dependence. The following week, Sophia comes to see me alone. She arrives without warning, standing on my porch in the late afternoon Sunday. Her posture is rigid, her arms folded tight across her chest. She doesn't waste time with pleasantries. You humiliated us, she snaps. Do you understand what you've done to Andrew's career? To our standing, you've ruined everything. Her words slice through the warm air, but I don't flinch. I simply look at her, really look at her, the perfect hair, the tailored clothes, the sharp eyes that never once softened toward me. For years, I let her dictate the terms of my relationship with my own son. For years, I let her shadow dim my place in his life. No, I reply, my voice calm but firm. I didn't ruin anything. I stopped enabling lies. The rest was already falling apart. You just didn't want to see it. She scoffs, her face twisted with disdain. You think you're some hero? You're a bitter old man clinging to control. I step closer, my gaze steady. No, Sophia, I'm a father who finally remembered his worth, and I will never let you or anyone else use me again. For a moment she falters. Her eyes dart away, her jaw tightens, and I see something beneath the arrogance, fear. She turns abruptly, storming down the steps to her car. As the engine roars and she speeds away, I exhale slowly, my chest loosening. Later that evening, I sit on the porch with Rosa. I tell her about the visit, about Sophia's anger, about my own resolve. Rosa listens quietly, then smiles faintly. That's the Richard I remember, she says. The man who builds, who stands tall, not the man who let himself be used. Her words warm me, but they also remind me of something deeper. I need to live as that man, not just for Andrew, not for the world, but for myself. Over the next month, I throw myself into projects. I help repair the roof of the local community center. I volunteer at food drives, hammering together shelves and carrying boxes. People start greeting me not with suspicion, but with gratitude. One man claps me on the back and says, "You've still got it, Collins." And for the first time in years, I believe it. But the real test comes when Andrew returns again. This time, he doesn't come asking for money, he comes asking for time. He stands on my porch, hands stuffed into his pockets, his face tired but calmer than before. "Dad," he says softly, "can we just talk?" I nod and lead him inside. We sit at the table, mugs of coffee between us. At first, the silence is thick, filled with all the years we wasted. But then Andrew begins to speak. He tells me about the foreclosure, about the fights with Sophia, about the shame he feels every time he looks at himself in the mirror. His voice cracks as he admits, "I let her voice drown out yours. I let her shape me into someone I don't even like. And I hurt you in ways I can't take back." I listen, my heart heavy but open. Finally, I say, "Andrew, I don't need repayment. I don't need grand apologies. I just need you to be honest with yourself, to stand as your own man, not as someone else's shadow." Tears glisten in his eyes. He nods slowly, whispering, "I want that. I want to be better." In that moment, something shifts. The wound between us doesn't heal entirely, but it begins to close. I see not the polished man who cast me out, but the boy I raised, struggling to find his way back. That night, after he leaves, I step onto the porch and look at the stars. The air is cool, the world quiet. For the first time, I feel at peace with the choices I've made. I didn't save him with money. I didn't cave to manipulation. I stood tall, and in doing so, I gave him the only gift worth giving, the chance to find his own strength. I whisper into the night, to Helen, to the memory of her steadfast love. "He's finding his way, Helen, and so am I." The breeze rustles the leaves, carrying my words into the darkness. I close my eyes, breathing in the cool night air, and know that I have stepped fully into my own life again, stronger, freer, and finally unafraid. 3 months have passed since that Christmas night when I walked away from Andrew's house with nothing but my dignity. Winter has loosened its grip on Spokane, and spring has spread across the town like a fresh coat of paint. The snow has melted, revealing muddy sidewalks and patches of stubborn grass. Trees stand proud again, their branches bursting with pale green buds. The air carries the scent of lilacs, damp soil, and possibility. Each morning I wake early, as though Helen is still nudging me from sleep, whispering that the day is waiting. I brew coffee the way she liked it, dark, strong, with a splash of cream, and sit on the porch while the sun climbs over the rooftops. For years, mornings began with a gnawing dread. What bill would arrive, what demand Sophia might call about, what new sacrifice I would be asked to make. But now I sip my coffee with nothing but peace filling my chest. My days belong to me again. The neighborhood feels different too. Some still glance at me with hesitation, as though the lies from that article might linger in the air like smoke. But many have returned with kindness. Mrs. Peterson from across the street waves every morning when she takes out her trash. Mr. Lewis, who runs the hardware store, slips me discounts and says quietly, "You got a raw deal, Rich, but you stood tall." Slowly, piece by piece, my place in this community is being rebuilt, not by money or reputation, but by truth. I fill my days with work that feels honest, grounding. At the community center, I spent hours repairing walls, fixing leaky pipes, and sanding splintered floors. The smell of sawdust and paint clings to my clothes, and for the first time in years I don't mind. A hammer in my hand reminds me of who I've always been, a builder. I see gratitude in the eyes of the kids who run through the halls, and it gives me a purpose I had almost forgotten. One boy, clutching a toy truck I glued back together, grins at me with his front teeth missing. "Thanks, mister," he says, and that small thank you feels heavier with meaning than all the hollow nods I once received from Sophia. At home, I work on a garden. Tomatoes, beans, herbs Helen used to cook with rosemary, thyme, basil. Kneeling in the soil, dirt clinging to my fingernails, I feel close to her. Each seed I press into the earth feels like a conversation with the past. When neighbors pass by, some stop to chat, others offer me seedlings from their own gardens. The exchange feels natural, simple, rooted in community. Rosa insists I come to her house for dinner every week. Her home is noisy, chaotic, alive in a way mine has not been for years. Children shout across the table, passing rolls and spilling milk. Laughter bounces off the walls like music. Rosa keeps piling food onto my plate, no matter how many times I protest. "Family doesn't eat alone, Richard," she scolds. Her words settle deep. For years, I confused family with obligation, with sacrifice measured in dollars. Here, I see the truth. Family is presence. Family is voices raised in love, even if they're shouting over each other. Family is laughter that doesn't ask for payment. Andrew begins visiting again. At first, he lingers only a few minutes, his apologies clumsy and half-swallowed. I don't demand more than he can give. I simply listen. Over time, the visits stretch longer. He tells me about his job, not the flashy corporate position he once bragged about, but a smaller, steadier role that forces him to put in real work. I see humility in his words, something I had feared would never come. Then one afternoon, he arrives with Emily. She bursts onto my porch like sunlight through clouds, her pigtails bouncing, her eyes wide and bright. Without hesitation, she climbs into my lap and presses a picture book into my hands. "Grandpa, read," she declares. That one word, Grandpa, wraps around me like a balm, soothing wounds I thought were permanent. My throat tightens as I open the book. My voice trembles at first, then steadies as I fall into the rhythm of the story. Emily's small fingers trace the pictures, her head resting against my chest. Andrew sits quietly across from us, his eyes soft, watching. In that moment, I feel Helen's presence stronger than ever. I imagine her smiling, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder as if to say, "See, Richard, the love we gave lives on." Emily becomes the bridge, Andrew, and I never manage to build on our own. She asks about me constantly, tugging on Andrew's sleeve to bring her back. She runs through my garden, her laughter carrying through the yard, and asks me questions about the stars when we sit outside at night. With her, I am not the man who was cast out. I am not a wallet, not a scapegoat. I am simply her grandfather. Sophia avoids me, her pride a wall she refuses to lower. When I pass her on the street, she looks away. I feel a twinge, but no longer a wound. I don't need her acceptance to define me. My worth no longer depends on anyone's approval. One Saturday, Andrew asks me to go fishing. We drive out to the river Helen loved, the same spot where we used to sit in silence together, our lines stretching into the current. The river is alive with spring, rushing fast, sunlight glinting off its surface. We sit side by side, casting our lines. For a long time, neither of us speaks. Then Andrew clears his throat. "Dad," he says softly, "I can't undo what I did. I can't erase the years I hurt you. But I want you in Emily's life, and I want you in mine, if you'll have me." I stare at the river, watching the sunlight break against the water. My chest swells, not with anger or grief, but with peace. "I've always wanted that, Andrew," I say. "But it has to be honest, no lies, no masks, just us as we are." He nods, his eyes wet. "Honest, I promise." We sit together, the silence no longer heavy but steady, like the flow of the river itself. That evening, I pour myself a glass of whiskey and sit on my porch. The garden is growing, the sky is painted with shades of pink and gold, and Emily's laughter still echoes in my ears. Rosa's words ring in my mind. "Family doesn't eat alone." I realize now she was right. Family isn't just who shares your blood. It's who shows up, who stays, who loves you without conditions. I raise my glass to the fading sky. "Here's to family," I whisper, "the kind that chooses you, the kind that stays." The whiskey burns warm as it slides down, and I know deep in my bones that I am free. As I sit here tonight, the air cool against my skin and the stars scattered above, I think about the road I've walked. I think about the sacrifices I made, the mistakes I let grow, the silence I allowed to swallow me whole. For years, I thought being a father meant giving until nothing was left. I thought love was measured in the size of my sacrifices, the weight of my wallet, the things I could build for others. But I have learned that love is not about how much you give away. It is about how much of yourself you remain true to. I see now that I did not lose Andrew because I didn't give enough. I almost lost him because I gave too much, without boundaries, without teaching him the value of gratitude and responsibility. In giving everything, I taught him that my worth was nothing more than what I could provide. When I finally stood up, when I laid the truth on the table and refused to be silent, that was the moment I began to reclaim myself. It was painful, It was messy, but it was necessary. And in doing so, I gave Andrew something I could never have bought for him, the chance to face the truth and grow. Now, I spend my days surrounded by people who choose me, not for what I can give them, but for who I am. Rosa's bustling table, Emily's laughter in my lap, Andrew's slow but steady steps toward honesty, these are the treasures money can't buy. And I realize that family isn't about appearances. It isn't about perfect dinners or polished reputations. Real family is made of the people who want you there, not the ones who only want your wallet. If my story reaches you tonight, I hope it reminds you of this. You are more than what you can give. Your dignity matters. Your presence matters. Do not let anyone erase you, not even the people you love most. Stand tall, even if your voice shakes. This is the story of my awakening. If it touched your heart, I ask you to stay with me, to support the journey, because there are many more stories like mine, stories of fathers who deserve to be remembered.